Initiating live stream. Pushing the buttons. Getting us ready for today's Unfiltered 262 coming up. Hello to our live stream. Hello, everybody. I'm just setting up right now for 262 of the Unfiltered program. Mr. Chase is en route. He seems to be leaving downtown Seattle right now, so he'll be making, I would imagine, pretty good time, traffic being willing. We shall see about that, so stand by here for a few moments. We'll get the live stream going. It's going to be a good show today. Okay, so one last plug for the Discord, discord.me/JupiterColony. That's where you go, discord.me/JupiterColony, and there is the Unfiltered chat room in there where you can participate in the conversation like a boost and, all those other things people say.
Oh my gosh, it's Anderson Cooper, everybody!
Okay, so we're going to just get right to it today. I know it's, for those of you tuning in on the replay of the live stream, it's going to be a short live show, but hopefully, if all goes as planned, it's going to be a little bit tighter of an overtime. And then we will move from there into like a live-only clip session. It's kind of my hope, but we'll see how it works out. It's going to depend on Chase's commute time. But all right, buckle up. Here we go. It is L Overtimes, and it begins right now in a 3, in a 2. Show's not over yet. Slow and steady wins the race. It's time for overtime! Brought to you by our patrons, patreon.com/unfiltered. Yes! We have 3 new subscribers. The holiday drawl is here. We seem to be going down a cliff a little bit, so if you want to help us pick up the momentum, it'd be much appreciated. Only a limited time left this year to get in 2017. But thank you very, very much to Shawnee G, who's very excited apparently, based on the amount of exclamation marks. Dustin and Alex B. Our 3 new patrons this week at patreon.com/unfiltered. This segment is brought to you by those 3 people and all of our patrons at patreon.com/unfiltered. Thank you. Now, we're going to just spend a little time in the Yo Nancy segment this week. We just have to remind ourselves why the Democrats aren't going to win a presidency until they correct some of these systemic issues, like their public image and the fact that people about my age, slightly younger and slightly older, are becoming a bigger and bigger part of the voting bloc. And to us, some of the people at the top of the Democratic Party look like absolute fools.
Good morning. Here it is. The GOP tax scam, the GOP tax scam. It will unravel the ACA.
This is Nancy Pelosi, of course, attempting to attack the tax plan.
It's sneaky ACA repeal, sneaky ACA repeal. It's a lethal attack on the middle class, on Americans' jobs, good veterans. We need increased veterans spending.
I'm sorry, what?
So it's not just an increase. Emergency disaster funding for Texas, Florida, Puerto Rico, and U.S. Virgin Islands, and wildfire.
I'm sorry, wildfire? What?
And, of course, passing the DREAM Act, which has bipartisan support.
Broad-partisan.
And I repeat, they're saying this is a middle-income tax cut, $82 million middle-class families, judiciary, and HIPS, Intelligence Committee.
I think I made my point here. You see, there is a credibility problem. There is I'm not believing anything this person says. She stumbles over her words. She can barely come across as sincere about what she's talking about. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have Maxine Waters, who just seems to be going full tinfoil conspiracy.
Connected and knows what it is.
And, Congresswoman, you have been out there, touting the idea that Donald Trump should face impeachment. That has fallen on deaf ears among your colleagues on the other side of the aisle.
What Joy means there by deaf ears is that Nancy Pelosi and others want her to desperately shut up, and they're sick and tired of being asked about it in every single interview that they go into. That's what Joy means when she says it's fallen on deaf ears within her own party. It's I guess it's a little newspeak translation I have to do here.
Republicans, does this indictment and this guilty plea of Michael Flynn, have you seen it change the attitudes on the other side of the aisle at all?
Not yet, but I think it's going to be hard for the Republicans to continue to be silent and to be standing with this president as it unfolds. This is the tip of the iceberg. There's lots more to come, and I think it's going to lead right to not only collusion, obstruction of justice, money laundering. It goes on and on and on. We are at a point in time in the United States of America with a president who is involved in all kinds of things that would shock people, I do believe.
Oh.
And so I know that I've been calling for impeachment.
She knows it. She believes it.
I've been criticized, but I know everything that I have learned about him and his allies.
Oh no.
Their interest in lifting the sanctions.
Does she know something that the investigators don't know? Should she be sharing something with Mueller? What's going on here?
Their connection to Putin.
Oh.
Their connection to the Kremlin.
Oh, no.
I know that we're going to find that
She knows it, guys.
this president needs to be impeached.
She knows that we are going to find that this president needs to be impeached.
We're going to find that this president needs to be impeached.
Okay.
And in all seriousness, there have been some real
All seriousness,
questions.
as in what you just said is ridiculous. In all seriousness, you're crazy.
In all seriousness, there have been some real questions about Donald Trump's mental state. Not only Tony Schwartz, who is the person who actually wrote The Art of the Deal, Bob Corker, who has called the White House an adult daycare center. You tweeted on Friday, Mr. President, there's help for your deteriorating mental health. It's called admitting guilt and telling the truth. Why do you suppose that even with Republicans...
Wow, could you imagine if a very prominent Republican tweeted that about Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama? Holy crap. Are you all the questions, are you medically qualified to make that assessment? Or where did you get that assessment? Have you examined Hillary Clinton? How dare you say that?
Republicans, either on background or on the record, questioning this president's mental stability, they haven't been willing to actually do anything about it.
The Republican Party is in disarray. I don't know that it is a party anymore. First of all, you're absolutely correct. They're silent. They aren't saying anything. Tillerson called him a moron. People are questioning his mental health. And look what they just did with this tax reform bill. They created a $1 trillion deficit when they're supposed to be the conservatives concerned about our budget, concerned about our expenditures. So I don't know who the Republicans are anymore.
You know what's interesting is Maxine comes across as much more reasonable and a better presenter when compared to Nancy Pelosi. Do you understand how bad that is for the party? Because Nancy Pelosi is so bad and Schumer looks like such a slime ball, you come across with Maxine Waters being one of the better spokespersons for the party, and she's full on conspiracy. She believes and she knows about impeachment. She believes it and she knows it, and she knows it and she believes it. You don't need evidence because she knows it and she believes it. What? Let's keep talking about Trump, though. There's lots of questions about obstruction of justice recently. There's a big outrage about major changes for a couple of national parks in Utah. It's causing a bunch of protests. The movement's called Hands Off Utah. But I want to talk about something else today that's probably going to be the most controversial thing in this show today. And that is Trump's plan to move one embassy.
Okay. Meantime, there is another developing story we're keeping an eye on. the international status of Jerusalem. It's one of the Middle East's radioactive issues. Israelis and Palestinians both claim it as their capital. Recognize one, and you undermine the other. Hence, the U.S. Embassy being in Tel Aviv. And that's something no U.S. president has sought to change until now. Donald Trump is expected to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital and begin the process of moving the U.S. Embassy there. The official announcement comes tomorrow. But he started making calls today to the Palestinian leader, Mahmoud Abbas, in the West Bank, to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and to leaders in Jordan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. Abbas, in turn, called Russia. He called France. He even called the Vatican for help. This is what emergency diplomacy looks like. Derek Stoffel picks up the story from Tel Aviv.
That's an interesting line there. This is what emergency diplomacy looks like. Extremely expensive phone calls by really important people. This is an interesting story. Just you can tell the framing of it here is particularly skewed. Emergency diplomacy. Let's go with this story for a little bit more. I think, actually, I want to back up because I think all of this is, how did they know this? This call map here, that if you're watching I guess this is not as compelling if you're listening, but if you're watching the audio, if you're watching the video version, they have like this black and white map where all these different connections across the world are happening. How'd they get this information? I don't recall if it's in the report. I guess we'll find out.
Mahmoud Abbas in the West Bank, to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and to leaders in Jordan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. Abbas, in turn, called Russia. He called France. He even called the Vatican for help. This is what emergency diplomacy looks like. Derek Stoffel picks up the story from Tel Aviv.
Calls between President Trump and several leaders here in the Middle East have unleashed a wave of alarm and even anger. This is why. There are concerns that if President Trump goes ahead and recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and starts the process of moving the U.S. Embassy from here in Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, the Arab world will see the United States as choosing sides, siding with Israel in the long-running dispute between the Israelis and Palestinians. Now, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, through his spokesman tonight, says that the moves could kill the peace process. King Abdullah of Jordan said the potential U.S. action could have dangerous repercussions for security throughout the region. And Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi also weighed in, telling Trump there's no need to complicate matters here in the Middle East. Palestinian factions are now calling for 3 days of rage right across the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. As a result, Israeli security forces are now preparing for demonstrations that could very well turn violent. Derek Stoffel, CBC News, Tel Aviv.
Those reactions from leaders today underscore wider worries beyond Israel and the West Bank. Concerns that the decision might throw the region into turmoil. So the question is, what might it mean for the neighbors?
I don't think this declaration will help the peace process.
Peace to well-known Palestinian cartoonist Mohammed Sabani takes the form of a dove, an ignored, often doomed peace, with the U.S. and Donald Trump as the villain.
Yeah, it's a pretty striking cartoon. I mean, this is they're going all out on this particular one. I'll follow it for any major developments that are actually, sort of noteworthy, other than, of course, this action itself, but now the fallout of it. I do have, I guess, I almost hate to even do tax stuff because it's like even right now it looks like it's not going through. So I'm going to just say defer to the overtime sync folder if you're a supporter and you want to look at some of the stuff we've collected on the new tax stuff. It's extremely U.S. centric and we have a bunch of people outside the U.S. and it all could change anyways by next week. So I want to instead go to an interesting piece. Because in here, Tucker Tuckerson says something really strange. He says, I know lying when I see it. And there's a lot of it over there. And he's talking about the Vegas shooting and about some of the stuff that a few weeks later, nobody's really talking about, but is really strange.
Stephen Paddock's killing spree on October 1st was the deadliest one-man shooting in the history of this country. 58 people were killed. He died as well. It's a tragedy that demands answers, but instead questions have only piled up. Why have we heard nothing more about Mary Lou Danley, for example, his girlfriend, Paddock's girlfriend, even though police say she may be hiding something? Where was Vegas's 40-member SWAT team as Paddock went on his rampage? For ourselves, we have asked why Las Vegas police have repeatedly obstructed our questions or been outright hostile to us. Weeks ago, they refused to provide answers to basic questions about security guard Jesus Campos, the one who took off for Mexico right after the shooting. Today, they made it impossible for us to get a filming permit on public land.
He's actually in Vegas. They've been following the story for a while on Cucker's show, and he took the show to Vegas to try to get some video, and then they totally blocked him. So I think he's a little upset because it's not a cheap endeavor, and it takes a lot of convincing of the upper management to take a show live on the road.
The one who took off for Mexico right after the shooting. Today they made it impossible for us to get a filming permit on public land. Why is that? We have no idea, but it tells you something interesting. Catherine Lombardo is an attorney representing many of the shooting victims here in Las Vegas. Doug Papa is a former police officer and casino security expert, and they join us both tonight. Thank you both for coming on.
Thanks, Tucker.
So, Doug, give me the overview here. We were talking in the break. We have compiled a list, my producers and I, of questions to which we have no answers. Very basic questions. I won't repeat them on the air, but basically we know basically nothing.
That's true.
Why?
I don't have any idea. It was one of the reasons why I started writing the stories right after the incident for the Baltimore Post-Examiner. I wrote 35 stories to date and try to get some answers from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And every time you called up the PIO, initially they're either very rude or they comment that it's an ongoing investigation and they can't talk. I had some specific things that really bothered me from the start. One is where was the 40-member SWAT team the night of the worst mass shooting in American history? And
let's start right there. What's the answer to that?
Nobody knows, and actually nobody actually asked the question to Sheriff Lombardo to this day. I was the only one that wrote these in the stories. I do not know where they were. I do know from doing my investigation and talking to sources within and outside the Metropolitan Police Department that Levi Hancock, who was the officer that breached the door with explosives, went in with an ad hoc team of 2 canine officers and I believe that Donaldson was the gang unit detective. And he was a little concerned about his safety from what I was told because he was going in with people he'd never worked with before. His SWAT team members weren't anywhere in sight. That's one of the things I raised, one of the issues I raised in the story. I do not know.
And that's, you can add that to a long list of things we don't know. So I think a basic question I've had from the beginning, and I haven't heard it addressed, is did Stephen Paddock come to the attention of authorities, federal, state, or local, before this shooting? And I'm not alleging a conspiracy, but it's a basic question. Do they know who this guy was? Do you know the answer to that?
I don't know the answer, but I suspect the answer is yes, based on what I've heard. Listen, I can't remember what's rumor, what's conspiracy theory, and what's facts on some days, but I've heard a lot of things. I've actually received a lot of information on paper. Yeah, I think they knew who he was. Of course they knew who he was.
So answer that even more basic question. You're handling the legal end of this. Where's the information coming from? The FBI have apparently taken over the bulk of the investigation. Is there a central source for known facts about what happened, or is it just ad hoc?
There is no source right now at all for any information as to what happened. Like I've said from the beginning, we expect it to take 4 to 6 months for the investigation. Look, I've said from the beginning that the lawyers for MGM and the corporate executives have been hunkered down in a room from day one, moment one, and they are putting all of their resources to protection of themselves, defending themselves.
Well, that's it right there. Look, I don't know the answer to any of these questions, but I know lying when I see it. I can smell it, and there's a lot of it around this story.
So he's suspicious. He's going to keep following it supposedly, and I'll monitor his coverage. You know, their defense posture could just simply be because of the magnitude of the media coverage around this story. I want to just do a little more coverage on the Brian Ross thing because that was just an interesting thing for me. Just when media actually gets caught getting it wrong, I kind of enjoy following that fallout and seeing the self-analysis that may or may not happen. And here is Kurtz, who is Fox's media analysis guy. I like him better than seltzer water, to be honest.
He's prepared to testify, we are told by a confidant, against President Trump, against members of the Trump family, and others in the White House. He is prepared to testify that President Trump, as a candidate, Donald Trump, directed him to make contact with the Russians, which contradicts all that Donald Trump has said at this point.
Now that would be a big deal, except there was only one problem. It wasn't true.
Uh-oh.
And it led to the suspension over the weekend of ABC News chief investigative correspondent Brian Ross. ABC News issued a correction, noting that President Trump instructed Flynn to contact the Russians after the presidential election as part of the transition team, not before. This is their quote. As a result of our continued reporting over the next several hours, ultimately we determined that the information was wrong. Effective immediately, Brian Ross will be suspended for 4 weeks without pay. Here now to evaluate how all of this was handled, Howie Kurtz, host of Media Buzz. Howie, good evening. Good to see you tonight.
Hello, Martha.
This is egregious.
Egregious doesn't begin to describe it. It's hard to overstate what an awful mistake Brian Ross made in rushing on the air with a half-baked story based on a single, unnamed source. It's like playing Russian roulette with your career.
Now, of course, they've never done anything like that, or weren't just recently caught doing something like that with the Seth Rich story. Of course not. No, of course not. And I do enjoy Fox considering itself the mainstream media watchdog when the American public thinks of mainstream media, one of the organizations they think of is Fox, especially the company behind Fox News. But that said, let's see what he has to say.
And in fact, he blew a hole in his credibility and he deserved to be suspended.
Yeah, because, and we should point out that there's a big difference. If the president was instructing Flynn before the election, during the period where the Russians were trying to meddle with the election, it goes to the issue of potential collusion. It also would bring up the Logan Act, which would mean that a private citizen was interacting with a foreign government on behalf of a future president. But as a transition member, he had every right to do that. Whether or not it turns out to be above board, that's another question.
Right. It's night and day. It goes from having a whiff of collusion to being routine diplomacy when you have the president-elect in charge. And ABC, though ultimately took pretty strong action, initially was just tone deaf on this thing. First calling it a clarification, then it was upgraded to a correction, and then came the apology and suspension that you just read.
Yeah. And it really did have reverberations across ABC. Watch this.
Breaking news. Oh, my God.
Yeah, there's the breaking news part right there. That guy right there.
The apology and suspension that
we'll
you just
end it
read.
here.
Yeah. And it really did have reverberations across ABC. Watch this.
So they were so pumped up about this, even before they gave it to Joy there, one of their producers comes on. Look, he's smiling. He's reading it. Look how happy he is. He knows this is a big deal.
Breaking news.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Let's just watch it one more time.
Oh, breaking news. ABC News' Brian Ross is reporting Michael Flynn.
Oh, we'll save it. You know what? We know where that's going. All right, so moving on. Before we get out of the overtime, there's a couple of more things to cover. One topic that I know is probably a little bit of interest to some of you, at least sort of theoretically, is a cashless society. Well, NBC News is on the trail.
When Brianne Kimmel gets ready to go in the morning, cash is not in the equation.
Oh, cash.
I think the last time I went to an ATM was 2 years ago.
She streamlined her wallet to credit cards only. Cash, she feels, is inconvenient and dangerous.
There's a lot of times where I think if I had a lot of cash on me, I'd be a little bit anxious.
While cash is still the #1 method of payment, between 2000 and 2015, non-cash payments in the U.S. grew by almost 400%.
$338 for you. Okay. I haven't really needed cash, to be honest. It's either my credit card or if I'm out with friends, I'll use Venmo.
Venmo, the mobile app where people can pay each other on a smartphone,
not native advertising, no!
Now processes $2 billion a month. This year, Apple added similar payment capabilities in iMessage. These free services are so popular, 30 major banks recently launched a competing product called Zelle. Doing away with paper money has been a big boom for small businesses, too, like the restaurant Sunday in Brooklyn.
The transaction at the table is quicker. Guests are looking for the cleaner, safer, easier transaction. And having a wad of cash in your pocket just isn't convenient.
But 7% of Americans do not have access to banking or credit cards. That adds up to 9 million households that operate with cash only.
When a business says we will not be accepting cash here, it also is saying we will not be accepting people who don't have smartphones here or can't afford them, and people who don't have bank accounts here.
Yeah, there's a reason to have cash.
You need a line of credit. You need some technology to be able to live in a cashless society.
Or what if you're just a tourist?
And that leaves out a large portion of our population.
Or perhaps potential business. I'm a fan of cash. I'm a fan of paying with my phone, and I'm a fan of cash. I could get rid of credit cards altogether if they'd like. If that'd be fine. Would that be what they prefer? Everybody? Here's a little raw Trump to wrap us up in the overtime. We're doing a compact overtime this week, and we just are going to wrap it with some raw Donald.
And President Trump left the White House this morning for Utah, where he'll address the state legislature there. He spoke with reporters before boarding Marine One.
Going to Utah. We're going to be doing something that the state of Utah and others have wanted to be done for many, many years. It will be one of the great, really, events in this country in a long time.
Wow.
So important for states' rights and so important for the people of Utah. And I know a lot of you are coming out with me. We'll have plenty of time to talk. The stock market, I think, is going to have a very big day based on the massive tax cuts that we're very much in the process of getting approved. But based on the vote we had last week, the stock market has been reacting unbelievably well. The only thing that hurts it is the fake news, and there's plenty of that. So we're heading out to Utah again. I know you're coming with me, a lot of you. We'll have plenty of time to talk today. Thank you.
And then it goes a little south.
Well, I feel badly for General Flynn. I feel very badly. He's led a very strong life. I feel very badly, John. I will say this. Hillary Clinton lied many times to the FBI. Nothing happened to her. Flynn lied, and they destroyed his life. I think it's a shame. Hillary Clinton, on the 4th of July weekend, went to the FBI, not under oath. It was the most incredible thing anyone's ever seen. She lied many times. Nothing happened to her. Flynn lied, and it's like they ruined his life. It's very unfair.
Oh! Rod Trump, thanks for joining us this week. See you right back here next week.
I do whine because I want to win. Oh my gosh, it's Anderson Cooper, everybody!
I'm not going to dignify that with an answer.
I say balderdash. OMG, OMG, OMG.
The rest of that clip's actually kind of funny. It's just raw, uncensored news media.
Thank you very much.
Reporter face. That's it. Just sort of just trails off. There you go. All right, so I got a bunch of clips for you guys. Let's start it out with a little live montage. These are always fun.
We are going to cooperate completely with the ethics investigation.
He's called for an ethics inquiry. I think that's appropriate.
But you don't think he needs to step down?
As of now, I think it's appropriate that there be an ethics inquiry.
Oh man, this is a dupe. That's a dupe. That's a dupe. That's a dupe. That's okay. I just randomly decided to throw that in there too. Anyways. Kids risk fracking sites. What? Brain damage? Oh no, this sounds like a pull the heartstrings one.
New research on fracking says 5 chemicals.
Russia hates fracking. I'm no Mr. Fracking, but I'm just saying Russia hates fracking.
Used in the process to extract oil and natural gas can lead to permanent brain damage. This is especially true for newborns and children. The Center for Environmental Health says exposure is linked to learning and developmental disorders and even neurological birth defects. This is the first study of its kind to focus on infants and children around fracking sites in America.
Hello, everybody.
To explain more tonight, we're joined by Caroline Cox. She's the research director of the...
Okay, so we're good there. All right, so let's see here. Let's go towards this one.
For more on this, we turn tonight to former U.S. diplomat Jim Jatras. Jim, good to have you with us tonight. The latest backdrop to this story is that there is a lot of conversation on Capitol Hill and at the White House about Rex Tillerson stepping down at the end of the year and Mike Pompeo.
Oh, you know, I'm sick of that guy, actually. I'm sick of that. How about some awkwardness? And then we'll get into the stuff these are all just random Spitfire things that I'm just sort of throwing in here that I didn't actually plan to cover on the live stream. But how about this one?
Scary because I think, you know, he's clearly retweeted that 3 times, three different retweets to play to his base, to play to his supporters. And now they're somewhat confused because they don't know what is real and what it isn't, but they follow him. I want to address something you said yesterday, Megan. You said that I implied that all Trump voters are racist or misogynistic. And
can we put it in context? You said when Hillary won, and it comforts you that she won the popular vote because that means that not everyone is agrees with otherisms, not everyone is racist, not everything. And
no, what I said was I feel better that she won the popular vote because that tells me that the majority of Americans understand that racism is wrong, that otherism is wrong, and that a woman can lead.
Understanding that racism is wrong, I interpret it as saying that they're racist.
Yeah, but let me.
Can I ask you a question?
Wait,
Do you think all Trump supporters are?
Let me finish my thought so that I don't forget it. I think you misunderstood what I said, and if you misunderstood it, then other people out there misunderstood it as well. And my point was very nuanced, and so let me explain the point. I do not think that all Trump voters are racist, and I didn't say that. I have friends, I have family, I have colleagues that voted for Trump, and so I don't think those people are racist. I think they're good people, and I can't see inside people's hearts. But what I will say is Trump ran a campaign.
Jeez, this is a lot of fucking backtracking.
On otherism. He ran a campaign about birtherism. He ran a campaign about Muslim bans. He ran a campaign calling your father not really a true war hero because he wasn't captured. Because he was captured. Mexicans are racist.
Her father, by the way, if you don't watch The View for some reason, that's the blonde far here on the right. That is Meghan McCain, her father being John McCain. So that's a reference there to your dad. You went after your dad. Don't you want to defend your dad? That's what she's kind of baiting her with right there.
Really a true war hero because he wasn't captured. Because he was captured. Mexicans are racist. He has a history of...
Jeez, Joy is really a piece of work, isn't she? Isn't she just a piece of work?
Because he was captured. Mexicans are racist. He has a history of housing discrimination against African Americans. The Gold Star families he went against. He says that he can grab women by the vagina. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So when people hear that and look the other way, and not only look the other way, but vote for him.
Vote for him.
Regardless of their personal motivation, whether it be race, whether it be...
Yeah, get in there. She's getting really passionate now.
Personal financial gain. I think you're somewhat complicit in that because you don't have to be a racist to... You don't have to be a racist to allow racism to flourish.
That's the biggest stacked audience ever, by the way. The Views really, really stacked the audience.
You know what I mean? You don't have to be a bigot to enable bigotry. You don't have to be a racist to allow racism to flourish. And so when I said 3 million other people saw what he was talking about and they didn't look the other way, they decided I can't support that. And you know what? It does make me feel better at night. And it makes me sleep better at night. That was my point.
Yeah, got it.
Jesus.
Is it clear? Is it clear now?
I think we view the election, I agree with some of what you're saying. I think that, with all due respect, I spend a lot of time in Red America. I think I understand the Trump voter, and I think to say that they're complicit, there's a lot of people that felt really left behind. I think this election was about poverty. You also said something about Andrew Jackson having a photo in the White House being a siren song or a virtue signal. I don't remember exactly, but something about...
For the viewers that didn't see that, you know, Donald Trump, when he was talking in front of the code talkers, the Navajo Nation, he was doing it in front of a portrait portrait of Andrew Jackson, who was the Indian killer, and he chose to have that portrait in his Oval Office.
And I said it was bad optics, but you said it was a signal, and I think for me, it's like sitting here being like,
well, why
if you
choose
have
that
a picture
one?
of Andrew Jackson up, that means that you hate Native Americans.
But
I
why
don't
him
understand.
at that particular
I don't.
meeting?
Can I tell you something? It is. I'm trying to explain my people here on the show every day, and it's an intense challenge. It really is. I try very hard every day.
Which are your people?
And
Which are your people?
I consider red state people my people.
Wait a minute. Hold on.
You didn't vote for Trump.
I did not vote for Trump, but part of it is because of personal attacks on my father. I couldn't reconcile those two things, but
And
I do
people
think
can't
that
reconcile his racist remarks.
I didn't vote for Trump because if I did, I can't have a job in the media. And if you think I'm making that up, then you don't understand how the media works.
Why do you think he that are of color? About the
Wait, hold on. Let us finish.
I'm sorry.
I'm really trying. I try every day to explain Trump and his supporters, and I think that I feel like after Obama's election, I tried very hard to understand why he won, what we weren't doing as Republicans, all these things, and I don't think the same respect is being done to Trump, no matter how much you hate him, and I get it. Trust me, I get how much everybody hates Trump. I understand. But I'm just saying, you are doomed to repeat the same mistakes that you did in 2016 if you think it's only about you're complicit as this voter, you're whatever, and you don't have to listen to me, but I tell you, before I joined the show, I watched your Election Day episode. I was not shocked in the same way that you guys were by Trump's win. I was not surprised.
You weren't wearing a black veil like Joy?
You weren't shocked as well.
But
that's true, you weren't shocked.
Yeah, no, I wasn't shocked. But here's the thing, really, at this point, he is in there. And I will tell you, I don't hate anybody. I really just like him because what he did, he didn't have to do. He didn't have to come in the way he came in. He didn't have to come in swinging like that.
Yeah.
And it pissed me off. But I will tell you this, and I'll say this before we go. Unless did everybody say what they had to say?
I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure. I'm thinking.
I think it's
But I also think that, like, a lot of people, no disrespect, and please jump in, Joy. Like, a lot of people hate Mike Pence and Paul Ryan. I had a conversation with him on the train that was like, I don't know who's worse, Trump, Mike Pence, or Paul Ryan. And when you call Bush Hitler, when you call my father Hitler, when you call Mitt Romney Hitler, at a certain point, if you cry wolf long enough, the beast shows up.
Oh! So maybe she has a point. I don't know. What do you think? You think about that? So that wasn't even going to be in the live stream stuff. How about that? How about that? Let's do the wildfires one. This is just a clip one, so I didn't make it in the show. But geez, California, they could get some of our rain. It's been really moist here in Washington. Wet and soggy. I've been seeing pictures on Twitter, too. Man. The Thomas Fire. That's really something. That is really something. Let's see, what else do we have here in the live-only section? Ooh, many things. Oh yeah, RT's pissed. RT's pissed off. That's funny.
A congressional committee in the US has just revoked RT America's accreditation on Capitol Hill. RT received the following letter informing the channel of the decision.
They screwed up their audio feed. They left the room mic on. I don't really care now. Gosh, that's funny. God, they're so. You know what, RT? Get your shit together. Or edit, for God's sakes. Why can't you edit? That's really good. What else could we play for your face? This is an interesting one.
Now, Greenpeace activists broke into a French nuclear power station on Tuesday to highlight what they say is weak security at the site.
Là, on est au pied de la piscine. Là, il y a Mathieu qui est en train de se faire déloger. Voilà.
I am Pascal, a Greenpeace activist. We decided spontaneously to enter the Cruas nuclear power station. We succeeded in getting into the cooling pool.
Well, it is a stunt Greenpeace has conducted before in France. It is part of a wider campaign to show that all 58 French nuclear reactors do have serious security issues. France is deeply reliant on them, as they do account for 75% of its electricity. Well, the country has the second highest number of nuclear plants in the world too, and in a report published back in October, a number of international experts did assess the risks posed by nuclear plants. They highlighted that security shortcomings in France and in Europe generally point out that most plants were built before modern-day terrorism emerged.
You know, I bet Russia would be happy to sell them some energy if they wanted to convert off those old dangerous plants. I bet Putin would be more than happy to make a great deal for anyone in Europe. Anyone want to take him up on that? Anybody? What's that? Oh, no. Okay. All right, well, let's go into some live stuff that I set aside for you. Let's pick up the pace. You want to pick up the... Actually, I'll save it. Let's go with something This is a little interesting trend I noticed that I saved to talk about with you guys. Let's see. Who do we have here? First, we have... Okay, I see here. I see. All right, so what do you think of this one? I hate millennials to begin with. I hate the buzzword, not the group, although... anyways, I hate just categorizing people, I suppose.
A new poll conducted in the US has revealed an overwhelming majority of the country's millennials want a third political party.
Yeah, that's because they're sick of the corporatist Democrats and they're sick of the corporatist Republicans. You see, because it's just corporations, and they know it. That's what I was saying earlier at the top of the overtime, is that people near my age bracket, in the general range around my age bracket, are going to matter more and more politically.
RT's Caleb Maupin spoke to young people on the streets of New York.
NBC was one of the sources of that poll, by the way.
To find out why.
In the USA, it's Democrats and Republicans. It's always been that way, a two-party system. Now, some people might think that makes the country more stable, but millennials seem to have a different perspective. Let's break down the millennials' case against the two-party system. Now, 65% of millennials say that the country is moving in the wrong direction, and 71% of them say that they're ready for a new third political party. But wanting to see a new political player in Washington is nothing new. According to the figures provided by Gallup, the number of Americans who favor a third party has been increasing over the course of the last 5 years. In 2012, it was only 46%, but in 2016, it was up to 57%. Now, you rarely hear about it, but third parties have actually been around in American politics since the 19th century. Now, why is it that in all these years, an independent political faction has never been able to take the White House? Well, maybe it has something to do with the fact that mainstream media is working overtime to keep people marching behind the elephant and the donkey.
I even understand the argument that a third-party candidate can put a new issue or a new solution on the table, but it is hard to make the case that that is what's happening here.
And to put it on a third-party candidate, who we now know that both of the third-party candidates out there are very much not qualified either through experience or through knowledge.
Now, amid the growing disillusionment with the two major parties, let's see if Americans would really prefer a third option. Do you feel that the establishment parties represent your values?
I feel that they are too aligned in different things, so I feel very independent right now of any support for any party.
No, I'm an independent, so I think both sides have valid things to say, and
that's why Hillary lost. That's probably why Bernie would have won, and that's why Trump won instead. Because at the end of the day, if you're not independent, at least the populist candidate will get you in there, I suppose. Okay, so now here's another clip. I thought this was sort of worth putting in, but not quite. So let's just sit back and watch.
It's a landmark merger that could change the way millions of Americans get health care and prescription drugs. CVS agreeing to buy Aetna for $69 billion means for the first time ever, one company will...
I'm sorry, how much did you say? Did you say 69 million? Did you say 69 million? You meant million, right?
Aetna for $69 billion.
Jeez. Whoa, did you hear that? They didn't say million.
Aetna for $69 billion.
$69 billion. Now that's the racket to be in.
Means for the first time ever, one company will own and control an insurance provider, a retail pharmacy chain, and a pharmacy benefit manager, which negotiates the price and discounts for your prescription drugs.
And that's why they were willing to spend $69 billion, because this is an invaluable market position.
It's really the perfect time to bring these two companies together to create a new healthcare platform that can be easier to use and less expensive for consumers.
The combined company will operate nearly 10,000 CVS pharmacies and clinics like this one. CVS plans to turn them into one-stop shopping for patients.
You'll find more primary care services from Aetna's network, wellness centers, and your pharmacy all in one place. CVS will continue to serve customers with other insurance, too. It sounds convenient, but will it save you money?
Maybe they get some more negotiating leverage and they can try to drive some healthcare costs down.
Experts also say this mega merger will mean less competition overall, which limits choice for consumers. The deal comes as Amazon prepares to enter the prescription drug market. The e-commerce giant has already received approval for wholesale pharmacy licenses in 15 states, potentially disrupting how you get your drugs and driving prices lower. A major shift in how your health care is delivered that could affect the price you pay. Jolene Kent, NBC.
Yeah, that's also what it's about. It's about making this happen before Amazon comes along and starts eating their lunch. So that I thought was kind of interesting. All right, this is live inbound from producer Matt right now. This is from the fire. Wow. Jeez, it looks like a movie set. How would you describe that? Could you imagine driving past that? I bet it's warm. I bet it's hot as hell. I bet the stank is pretty strong. Wow. Even better if it wasn't vertical. Jeez. Wow, that is really something. You could really see the embers there at the end. Whoo! Whoo! All right, so your good friend, your great buddy, Mr. Stephen Bannon.
We'll hear from former White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon. He spoke at an event organized by the Black Americans for a Better Future, a super PAC that aims to get more African Americans involved in the Republican Party.
Now, this is a 47-minute long clip, and I'm not going to play all of that for you, but I did just randomly jump into it to see if it was worth playing for you, and I came across an interesting moment, and it's only because he happened to sort of, and I think it'll be about a minute after I hit play. I'm not exactly sure because it's sort of rough. Let me see.
So if you just do the math, the $3.5 trillion of forced technology transfers coupled with $5.6 trillion for fighting the war on terror. And by the way, that's not an entire defense budget.
Yeah, he has some interesting numbers he throws around too, which I did some Googling and seem to be accurate. But anyways, he puts words to something that's always been my opinion. And it's about how the media portrays what's going on in government. And it's why sometimes I think politicians are caught flat-footed that what's really going on leaks out, because they're so accustomed to what's happening in the media and in the public discussion is completely theater. And there's totally different things happening behind the scenes. And this clip sort of it says that. And it might be a little bit in here. I might have to search around a little bit, but I thought it was pretty good.
That's what, $10 trillion? What would this country look like if $10 trillion was reinvested in this country? What would it look like if you guys had a piece of that? What happens if Black and Hispanic entrepreneurs had $500 billion to invest? This would be a totally different country, right? So how did it happen? Here's how it happened. The elites in this country have made out like bandits. Stock market's all-time high. And I realize President Trump says you get 401ks. He's absolutely correct. The stock rise under President Trump's been unprecedented, right? It's been fantastic. And workers have benefited from it. But that's not the point. The point is that the elites are quite comfortable, and this is both regardless of political party. To me, political parties don't matter anymore. Everything you see on cable TV, our good friends at MSNBC and CNN and Fox, everything you see in the foreground is pro wrestling, okay? It doesn't matter. It's just noise. It's just noise. The real action is what takes place behind the curtain.
Yeah, that's what we try to do, right? We try to cut through the noise and say, what's really the story here? And how many times do we nail it? Really, with all this stuff. Like, look what happened with Flynn. Look, all this stuff. It's because you're cutting through the noise.
Why are 7 of the 9 richest counties in this country around Washington, D.C.? Right? Why, for the first time since the development of the Silicon chip, that Washington, D.C. has a higher per capita income than Silicon Valley. And Silicon Valley is the greatest creator of wealth in mankind's history. It's because it's not the $4 trillion federal budget you've got. It's all the off-balance sheet cash they got to play with, too. Remember, we have $20 trillion face amount of debt. That's just tiny. The contingent liabilities, depending on what your assumptions are, anywhere from $60 trillion to $200 trillion. The global stock markets the other day, I think it was on Friday, they reached the total aggregate amount of value in the global stock markets reached, I think it was $100 trillion. Am I correct? I saw that number, $100 trillion. How much has that gone to the middle class of this country? How much has gone to the working class in this country? Here's the scam, and here's what remember, economic nationalism does not care about your color, your race, your ethnicity. It doesn't care about your religion. It doesn't care about your gender. It doesn't care about your sexual preference. That's all irrelevant.
This is his position. This is his
You know what it cares
message.
about?
What's it care about?
Only one thing.
What's that?
You're a citizen of the United States of America.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, illegal immigration and the trade deals are two sides of the same coin. It's to suppress the wages of workers, right? The terrible trade deals are to have unfair competition among our workers, right? That's what it is. The whole thing is because it's made cheaper over there. You don't need to tell the people in Ohio. They know where the jobs went. The jobs went to Asia. This wasn't the second law of thermodynamics. There's no law of physics that said that had to happen. That is human agency made that decision. It was going to happen, and it went. You know, J.D. Vance wrote this book.
So anyways, the whole thing, you can probably find it on C-SPAN if you want to search for it, or it's in the ZZ Live folder in the overtime. But what do you think? Anything you disagree with there? I'll tell you, there does seem to be a disconnect between the Bannon we hear about and then the Bannon you actually see when you watch him in a long form. He seems pretty clever. He seems well-spoken and like he's thought a lot about this, and then he thinks a lot about this and compares it to historical context, and that's a pretty powerful combo. So I can see why the media rushes to paint him as a racist, as leader of the alt-right, and all of those things to try to dial him down a little bit. Here's a cool project going on in Detroit. This will probably get the live stream flagged, but it's pretty cool. Music almost always guaranteed by any of the major media outlets, NBC especially, almost always flags us. It's completely bullshit. This is fair use. We're commenting on the coverage, but it's the way the YouTube system tends to work.
The state of internet in Detroit is quite sad. 40% has no connection.
So from food, housing, clothing, shelter, all the skills been stripped from us. It's like, damn, I gotta build everything from the fucking floor up.
Digital justice looks like no chains, you know? It looks like giving internet to people. It looks like building networks. That's why I'm doing it.
So we've now entered into Southwest Detroit, which is actually where I live. I just recently moved because I got priced out of my neighborhood. So I think that's a big part of the narrative too, is that people are just trying to keep their resources because so much is changing. I'm Diana Nucera. Sounds a little low to me. AKA Mother Cyborg. I've been teaching people technology for as long as I can remember. To me, Mother Cyborg is someone who's supposed to help people come to the realization of the potential of technology. I'm the director of the Detroit Community Technology Project, which is responsible for the Equitable Internet Initiative. Well, you know, Detroit's like one of the top 5 least connected cities in the United States. So what happens when you have half of the city that has 1,000 megabits per second, and then the people with the least resources only have 10? I think that causes a huge problem as far as like what you can do with access. Because of high foreclosure rates and because of bad credit, a lot of telecom companies don't offer good service within these areas, or they won't even turn on their fibers. So we have a lot of dark fiber that doesn't have internet running through it throughout the city. So we have gigabit fiber that we've purchased from a ring that was recently built downtown. They have built fiber up to a rooftop, and that rooftop then has a router that then is being pointed to each of our community centers. There's a global infrastructure. A lot of that fiber runs underneath cities and under the floors of oceans. That internet infrastructure then has these exchange points throughout the world. And the exchange points are where internet service providers then tap in to be able to exchange information. And then from there, internet service providers then build infrastructure to then share the signal. And so that's where we come in. We need to build our own infrastructure and rethink internet service providing and access in order to reach those people that have been traditionally left out and marginalized. So the work we've been doing is not just about access, it's about building a healthy digital ecosystem. We're also building an infrastructure that was missing in Detroit. What evolved out of that was what we call the Digital Stewards Program. We have now trained trainers in 3 neighborhoods, in the North End.
So yeah, we just leaving our spot right here. Our AP's on top of this building. We got our drivers right here. We got Gabby right there. We got the young guy, Haru, right here in the North End.
In Island View.
This space is the maker space for the church. The share network is down here, as you can see over your computers. Dwight works on like the wiring and cabling. A lot of the manual things that are on the tech side.
And in Southwest Detroit.
This would be an example of a public space. Some of the neighbors come over and they do their homework in the alley because we could share the Wi-Fi. A lot of the people right now, they currently there's people that go to McDonald's for Wi-Fi. Why not have a public space for people to use it?
It said 18 megabits though, so 89. Usually we have to put stuff up on the roof, but these trees are old in the North End. That's been our biggest complication, these like beautiful ass trees. It's good to have trees as your complication.
87, 81, 82, 83.
Let's try the front window. This was our first one and it took 3 hours, so our time has been decreasing. I feel like me and my teammate Gabby can get one done in about an hour, honestly. You got to plan before you leave. We all got to be aware of like what's going on. Like, are we testing? Are we installing? We got to communicate. So a few things on paperwork got to be filled out, a few calls got to be made, and that's it. It's simple.
So this is the router that's on top of Grace in Action. Anything that we can see like straight from here is a house that we can get connected. So like the houses across the street, we can talk to the liquor store owner or to the body shop owner. We're using our community relationships to kind of zigzag the connection down to Grace in Action.
I gotta say, I'd be all over this if I was in this area. Even, I was gonna say a kid, but because I actually considered doing something similar to this when I was young. And for actually this area. But this would be such an awesome project. And I can't really tell if they got Linux on the machines. It feels like there must be some Linux somewhere in here.
In a way right now, like 60% of Detroit is without high-speed internet. Like even the, the AT&T dial-up internet. And so things like water department, DTE, social services, they're not even translated. We're in a large Spanish-speaking community as well. People are being left behind in a system where technology is moving forward. There's a big digital divide, and so we're trying to make steps in order to bridge that gap.
My name is Wallace Adam Gilbert, Jr. I'm the assistant pastor here at Church of the Messiah. We don't use titles, so everybody basically refers to me as Wally. This neighborhood is called Island View. To our west is downtown Detroit. It's booming and it's bustling. We are 2 minutes from the Detroit River. This is a very diverse neighborhood. This is one of the older parts of the city. We have an Earn a Computer program here at the church. So the kids come in, we put the call out, we get all of these old machines, we bring them in and we help them build computers. This past Christmas, all of the kids were literally on every computer in this church. I'm walking around saying, you know, what's going on? They said, well, we gotta go back to school tomorrow. So why are you on this machine? I helped you build a machine. I know you have a nice machine at home. He said, yes, Wally, but I don't have the internet. Without the internet, we've basically only given them typewriters.
So right here with these blue dots with the house symbols on them, these are the people who have filled out applications and are interested in receiving the internet. So we could service all of these people rather quickly. To get a signal from the Church of the Messiah, we would have to look at what buildings do they have over there that we can make a hub.
So what we're doing now is we've done the physical mapping, we've actually turned up the network here at the church, and now the individual residents are coming and signing up. We have 37 people that are on board. The main access is here at the church, and then we're broadcasting to other facilities. One of the requirements is that you do not have internet. Second requirement is that you cannot afford the internet. The third is you have to be within our range.
You look around and what you see is decay, but at the same time there's community groups developing, there's a food pantry, you know, the churches are still active in the community. We have an antenna right here, by the way, it's on the back of the house, and another one on the front of this house. We're giving people the internet.
Gabby, why are we doing this?
Justice. This is the future of the internet. This is the future of the world. New CCEII internet.
We found our spot. We about to install. Took a little minute, couple windows. We don't have to go to the 3rd level, so we should be good. So this is the final step, y'all. So we got our CPE outside. We got our RJ45 coming in to the grounding. The grounding got an RJ45 coming out to the router. The router is not connected to this laptop that she's configuring, giving network information to the devices in the house.
How do you leverage ownership of the networks that everybody uses every single freaking day? How do you leverage that? And then the connectedness between Island View, Grace in Action Southwest, and New CC on the north end. Again, different neighborhoods, but is there a community that gets established by those networks?
The community is actually starting to get very involved, they're very informed, they're very aware, and it was not an easy process, but they're there now.
Though some of the challenges in this process, it was a challenge negotiating to get our connections. Being a woman, specifically a woman of color, a lot of people aren't going to listen to me when it comes to technology or even the internet. We primarily work with women of color, and that to me has been like a success that's come out of this. And it's a proof that if you have people of color in leadership, then it'll uplift other people of color to come into leadership as well.
I think it's important when you talk about businesses and places and organizations that do things to have a face to it. So